All right, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about how profitable should my Amazon business be? And today we have Tyler Jefcoat, who's an accountant, finance MBA, ex-banker, Care to Continue Healthcare, CEO of Seller Accountant, and CFO for $35 million in annual Amazon sales. We also have Eric Reed from Webgility. He is our business advisor here. He has 15 plus years of SaaS and e-commerce sales experience and has worked with thousands of Amazon sellers. And now I'm going to kick it over to Tyler.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. So it's good to talk to you guys. I'm Tyler Jefcoat. Yeah, my company is called Seller Accountant. I formerly was the founder and owner of a healthcare company called Care to Continue, 0 to about 120 employees in 4 years. I sold that company, and I love what I get to do now because 100% of my business is helping e-commerce sellers sort out how to make more money. And so this is my favorite question, is not just how profitable should my Amazon business be, but what do I do about it if it's not as profitable as I wish it was? And so that's going to be our discussion today. There is a tremendous amount of content here, and so I'm going to work through it. I think Eric's going to have some great comments for us, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. But just kind of the quick here, we're going to talk about why people are still flocking to Amazon in spite of all of the flooding competition. My team did a pretty robust study on how profitable the average Amazon seller actually is. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to kind of dive into what do the good guys do? What are the businesses that are actually making money in this space? What do they do that maybe other sellers aren't doing as well? I've got 3 bonus nuggets that I think it will be helpful for you if you're looking to scale your business. And then again, we'll kind of move into Eric's time and do some Q&A. Okay, so a quick look at Amazon here. So you guys know Amazon is dominant. They are completely dominant. They are trashing the competition when it comes to driving eyeballs to listings and then converting those listings across the nation, across the world. But with more than, I think it's like 10,000 new sellers or more a month joining the marketplace, why Amazon? Why are people still flooding to this? I mean, it's a crowded space, right? I mean, and the reality is that the space is changing, it's evolving, that the tactics that worked 5 years ago aren't working anymore, but it is still the most capital and the most competency efficient channel for selling your products anywhere in the world. And just to define those, this is kind of like CFO speak for, capital efficient. It used to be olden days. Like, think about it. If anyone's ever read the book Shoe Dog, you understand Nike's story, how much energy, how much cash, how many, personal trips to Asia were required for Phil to get that business off the ground and build this gigantic legacy brand that is now Nike. Well, Amazon has changed that game. Now we don't have to have the same level of money. It doesn't take us $1 million to build a new brand. And if we have 50 grand, now all of a sudden we can buy a couple of runs of products, we can test them, and we can get them to market, we can find some that work, and we can build a brand around that. And so Amazon, in addition, by the way, Amazon has a fully integrated supply chain where you can get once you actually source the product, you can get them, shipped directly into FBA, and then they will deliver them to your customer for you, which basically makes Amazon the most cost-effective way to launch a new brand right now, unless you have a bunch of traction already going for you. The second thing here is I'm calling it competency efficiency. What I mean is you don't have to be good at as many things to sell on Amazon. You can pick just a few things. If you're really good at PPC campaigns, for instance, or if you're really good at optimizing listings, or if you're really good at buying products cheaply, you can get them on Amazon, and Amazon solves a whole bunch of the other headaches that it used to be. You'd have to solve all of them. You'd have to get a warehouse. You'd have to figure out how to ship products to America. You'd have to find, bricks and mortar retailers to sell through, and you have to develop your brand and this, that, and the other. Well, now you can really focus on just being good at a few things and make a really great living on Amazon. For those reasons, on top of just the reality that they're going to continue to dominate the e-commerce space, Amazon's an incredible place to sell. And so, Sarah, is this where we have the poll? Yeah, so I don't know. It may actually make sense to run this poll here, but go ahead and launch the poll. So what I'm really interested in, I think this is probably a poll that's going to be more meaningful as people, maybe a few more people join the call here. But I'm just curious. I mean, it may not be a perfect fit here, but what is it that best reflects your business. How, are you a retail arbitrage? Are you kind of the old school arbitrage seller? Are you an authorized arbitrage seller, meaning you have relationships with brands and you represent them on private label, or maybe you're really trying to build utility and design patents, and then maybe you might be none of the above. So far it looks like all of us are private label. Okay, so we're getting some more votes here. So I don't know if you guys can see the results here, but when they come out in a minute, you're going to notice that there is a leaning towards private label. Oh, here we go. Here's the actual poll. So you can see that we have none on this call, at least so far, traditional arbitrage. No one's using their old Macy's MasterCard to go and buy all the Nintendos and Walmart, right? I mean, that business model is requiring a pivot at this point. And so most of us have moved towards a private label business model. And you can see that there's a growing trend, and this doesn't surprise me, there's a growing trend in both the intellectual property space and in the authorized reseller. In fact, there's a huge push for these legacy brands to get into the Amazon game. And for many of them, hiring us to actually become the authorized seller for them is the most efficient way for them to do it. So thank you, Sarah, this is great. But yeah, this is a quick picture of what we're, here we go. So just to describe this study real quick, what my team did at Seller Accountant is anybody who would talk to us, as many sellers as we could get our arms around that would give us insights into their real profitability. We kind of put together what we called an aggregate study. We wanted to really understand, because you guys know this, we all go to the same conferences, and the only thing that anyone wants to talk about is their sales. But as you and I both know, sales is vanity, profit is sanity. And so we were on a quest to figure out, okay, how much money are the sellers actually making? And so we landed, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million in Amazon sales that we were able to kind of parse through. And so if we look at the next slide here, what we do is we basically turned these into a very simple profit and loss statement. So this is a little bit small. I'm hoping you guys can see this, but if you were to normalize all of that data, all of those, bunches of sellers that we talked to, some of them were our clients, some of them weren't, and we kind of normalized it around $1 million seller. So, they had a small 3% refunds, and so they ended up with $1 million in kind of net sales. Across the board, their product costs were about 30%. Their fulfillment costs, this is including inbound freight to Amazon, and then actually the pick and pack fees, they were around 25% all in for that number. And then the Amazon commissions obviously are going to be 15%. Making it to where your gross profit on average was about 30%. And then advertising across the board, and I'm glad that we're primarily private label sellers here, because this is pretty much, because my clients tend to be a lot of private label sellers, this is heavily skewed towards larger private label sellers. But they had about a 10% of their total sales budget for advertising, which leads us to this kind of bolded line here called sellers discretionary earnings. SDE might be the acronym that you hear tossed around out there. This is the most important cash flow metric if you're trying to value your business. This is the most important metric if you're looking for actionable intelligence on how to improve your profitability. This is basically gross profit minus advertising. In other words, if I put a pile of SKUs online, how much am I actually getting in profit from the sale, from the direct sale of those SKUs? And what we saw across the board was about 20%. About 20% is so if you sold a product for $100, after you advertise for it, you would expect to have $20 to go back into your business. Generally these are still smaller businesses, probably $500,000 to 10 million in revenue. So there's an overhead element of about 15%. You have your little bit of net income, you pay a little bit of taxes, and all of a sudden, this average Amazon seller, after they pay their taxes, is making like $33,000, $34,000 a year. To be fair, many of them were paying themselves as part of the overhead, so I want to be fair there. But my knee jerk after I saw this was, wow, we've got to really work on improving the profitability of sellers. And by the way, these are not put sellers. These are not the sellers who are failing at Amazon, because they wouldn't have called me. I wouldn't have even known them if they were the statistic that fails. You know, some 90% fail within 2 years, especially the internationally based sellers. And so these are sellers that are doing some volume, but they're working really, really hard. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you what it looks like kind of in the form of a pie chart here. People love pie charts. So everything that is not blue, kind of this bottom half of the pie here, is basically Amazon, right? They're getting the FBA fee, they're getting the commission. Normally they're part of your inbound freight strategy, and then you have your advertising. And so Amazon's a 50% of your sales partner. Amazon's getting paid. They love it when you sell stuff. What's really important though is to ensure that you're getting paid. And so what we tell our clients is it's extremely critical that that SDE, that seller's discretionary earnings number, is really at least 20%. I mean, our best sellers are doing much better than that. But if your product blend can't consistently yield 20% in free cash flow, then you really do have a problem. And there's something you need to look at in terms of fixing your product blend. And so here's a couple of the reasons that the sellers that weren't performing well. So if you kind of think down your profit and loss statement really quickly, you know, the most obvious reason is if you don't have any sales traction, right? If you haven't found a product blend that you can sell on Amazon or in your other online channels and command a high enough price, in other words, you're not solving enough of a problem with your product to actually get sales traction. I'm not talking about having to give away, right? You don't want to have to do so many promotions, but can you actually sell the product? That was one reason. Number two, and it's probably the most important one, is the poor margins. You haven't purchased the right products. You don't have enough margin built into your pricing structure that you can actually make a living. And then the third one here is they can't manage PPC. It's kind of a silent killer because it falls a little bit lower down your profit and loss statement. But we've seen so many sellers where their PPC spend is totally out of control. They've left some things automated, and as a result, they're losing money on their products. I'm going to come back to this graph in maybe a few slides later, so we can move on to the next slide here. So reason number 4 that we see sellers not performing as well as they would like to sell is just having just having too much overhead, right? So the nice thing about being an Amazon seller is that it's actually pretty easy to stay lean. You can run this business from your house normally. You don't have to have a warehouse. You normally don't have much rent expense to begin with. You don't have to have a lot of employees in the business. But what ends up happening is that we end up with 55 different SaaS products, and we have contractors, and we're not managing them well, and we start bringing on employees. And then the other kind of silent killer that's going to bleed into my next couple of points here is interest. So we have to find creative ways to fund our product purchases, and as a result, we can end up with so much interest expense that it's crushing us. So there's too much overhead, which is kind of tied in again to this undercapitalized. If we don't have enough cash, if we didn't have enough initial investment into our business, it's going to be really tempting to take whatever loan, whatever company will throw at us. And we really saw this as a recurring challenge for the worst performing sellers, was that they didn't have enough cash. And so it becomes this vicious cycle of, oh boy, I've got to get whatever loan someone will give to me. And therefore their interest expense becomes an outsized percentage of their P&L. And so this little, oversimplified graph here, we talked a minute ago about sellers' discretionary earnings. This is your cash flow generated after advertising. So it's kind of gross margin minus advertising is what cash your products are generating. Obviously, the more cash you can generate, the more you can afford to pay in salaries, the more you can afford to do research and development. You can, pay outsourced teammates or contractors. You can, service your debt. And ultimately, we want you to be able to take some money home. And so, these are really the 6 reasons that we see sellers not performing at the level that they wish they were. And now what I want to talk about is really the things that the winners were doing. So why are the profitable sellers so profitable? So the first thing that they do, and they really consistently did this better than their lower performing competitors, was that they just keep score. I know this sounds almost too simple, but they know where their money is. The sellers that are making money are counting it. They understand what they're spending on SaaS. They understand what their profit margins ought to be on their products. and they're keeping an eye not just on how things are actually going, but where they want them to go. And so, I'm going to try to give you guys, by the way, I've got these 5 kind of best practices. I'm going to try to give you a practical nugget for each of them. The practical nugget for this first one, and I actually think we can go to the next slide here, Sarah. So when it comes to keeping score, it's just really important to, I know this is a really tiny P&L, but it's really important that you're able to see how each of your sales channels is performing individually. As you grow as an e-commerce seller, you've got to really move your books to more of an accrual basis of accounting where you can actually see each month whether you're making money. Make sure that you have your Amazon fees, the commissions and the FBA fees baked into your cost of goods sold. And here's the big thing: is start counting things. If you're doing more than $10,000, $15,000 a month, even that's a pretty small seller. You need to have a basic accounting system, whether it's QuickBooks Online or Xero. Pick a system. That's kind of the practical nugget there, is have things organized and invest in an accounting system that allows you to see where your money is going. So that's the first thing that sellers do that makes them more successful than the average. The second thing that we see is that sellers who are winning at the game of selling on Amazon, they're highly focused. Thank you. There we go. Second slide here. So they're really focused. So they understand their core business. So we did the poll here really early on to try to understand whether the folks on this call were primarily retail arbitrage, or they were authorized sellers, or they were private labelers. The most of us were private label sellers. If you know what you're good at, you've got to focus your energy. My dad always told me when I was growing up, you got to spend your time where you're making money. And I've seen so many really successful, like one example, they were really successful large scale reseller, and they were like, ooh, we're going to get in the private label game. But they didn't have the core competency in their business to do private label well. Well, it wasn't surprising that division of their business struggled and lost them money. Find what your niche is, find what your thing is that makes customers pick you over the alternatives, and become the best at something. I think that's the biggest thing that we saw. If we can go to the next slide, a couple of practical nuggets here related to focus. So that's great. So by the way, just a quick book about focus. If you're looking for a way to focus your business model, Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz is a good book. 4 Disciplines of Execution is also a good one for how do you find your core niche and focus on it. The third thing that made the most profitable sellers profitable was that they really understood how to manage the margin to ad ratio. So I'm going to explain this oversimplified chart here. The more you have in cost of goods sold, the less you can afford to spend on advertising, period. That's just the bottom line. And so we did our little poll earlier. You have your retail arbitrage, your wholesale arbitrage, your private label, your IP-based brand, and then your legacy brand, these brands that are finally getting into Amazon. They've been selling off of Amazon forever. And you can see the continuum there. The more you have to pay for your goods, the more you need that good to sell itself, right? You need to already have traction. And obviously, the lower your cost of goods sold, the more vertically integrated your supply chain is, the more you can afford. And frankly, you're going to have to invest to move the traffic to your listings and convert those listings. And so that's the third thing we saw is just sellers that understood that relationship. And just to kind of give you my quick nugget on that, our magic number tends to be 40. So if we were to take your cost, just your raw cost of goods sold, remember the average was 30% for raw COGS. And if our average was 10% in advertising, if I add those two numbers together, advertising as a percentage of sales and just the product cost of goods sold as a percentage of sales, I would love that number to be 40% or less, especially for my private label brands. You may have to be more aggressive on the front end as you're launching some new products. But my advice to you would be to have a plan that gets those numbers added together to be as close to 40 as you possibly can. And so then the fourth thing that is going to make the most profitable sellers more profitable is that they aren't married to their SKUs, right? I mean, you made this baby. This product is mine. I love this product. It's my sweetheart. No. You can't view it that way. You have to actually measure the profitability of your individual ASIN, and if it is not performing up to snuff, you've got to kill it. And there's a couple ways you can do this in terms of practical nuggets here. You can either manually measure the profitability of each SKU. I recommend if you go into Seller Central, into fulfillment reports, and you can just get that fee preview report, It gives you kind of what each sale of your product should have in terms of fees. I would add a column where you get cost of goods sold, add your average advertising, and try to understand what your discretionary cash flow will be from each unit. And then you can kind of make sure you know who your good guys and your bad guys are. If you have a little bit of a budget for this, there are some great tools out there that can help you understand SKU level profitability. There's 15 of them. I won't mention them here on the webinar, but all of those different products out there are aiming to try to help you understand profitability. I actually think Eric will probably share a little bit about how WebGility can help do that here in a little bit. So that's the fourth thing, is that you got to grade each SKU. You can't get away with not understanding and even having goals for each of the products in your portfolio. And then finally, I think the fifth thing that has really separated our top performers from the ones that are really lagging behind the market here, so we can go ahead and go to the next slide here, is that they understand and proactively manage their cash flow, their cost of capital. They don't let cash happen to them. They don't let purchases of inventory happen to them. They actually have a forecast. They understand the impact of inventory purchases, of having to pay taxes, of having to pay your overhead. And they build a plan in advance so that they have the time to go find money if they need it, instead of having to have an emergency where you go take whatever money someone will throw at you. I think again, it's so true. The most expensive money is the money that you need today because you haven't planned for it. And obviously the cheapest money is your own money. And so our successful sellers weren't paying a ton of interest expense. They had a very clean balance sheet when it came to lending, and they had built up a little bit of cash reserve, which we'll talk about here when we get into the scaling nuggets. They built in some cash reserves to help them be able to weather the unfortunate, or something that happens that they didn't think was going to happen. So these are really the 5 things that we see that, if you kind of were to put them together, that separated our most profitable sellers from the rest of them. All of the sellers they had very sophisticated systems for all 5 of these, and it's a game changer when you have your eye on these balls. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you about that. The other thing I wanted to do to kind of close the content section of this is, I've really seen another part of this. Our largest sellers, what about the sellers that were doing $5, $10, $20 million a year in revenue? What was it that they had implemented that helped them actually build scalability into their businesses? And Sarah, we can go to the next slide here, but I'm going to give you 3 quick kind of bonus nuggets to maybe help you bring your business. If you're a solopreneur, this is kind of your thing and you're doing it by yourself. Or if you've reached a threshold, you're at a point where you're at maybe $1-2 million a year, and you're looking to figure out how to make this more of a larger company that you might be able to sell down the line. These are going to be 3 kind of bonus nuggets I'll give you. So here's the first one. So if I had a business, well, let me just say this. If I had a business that was very much a startup, I'm not going to spend any money on anything. I'm not going to spend any time on anything, by the way, including accounting, except to drive profitable sales. Every ounce of my energy is going to be geared towards making money on sales of products. But as I grow, I'm going to have to build some sophistication into my systems. I'm going to have to have people come on board as employees. Then I'm going to have to basically build a hiring process. I've got to keep time. I might have to have an accounting team join me. I may have to have a marketing team join me. If that's what's going to happen for you, it's better to be intentional on the front end so that you get it right. I'll look at the next slide here, Sarah, and I'll show you a couple of books that I recommend for helping you build an operating system. So my favorite is the one on the top here. This is called Traction. Gino Wickman is the author. With our healthcare company, again, that scaled from 0 to 120 employees in 4 years, we implemented Traction. I wish we had done it earlier, but we implemented it about 3 years in, and it was a game changer in terms of helping us get organized, helping us manage our team, have the right data in front of the team so that they know how they're performing. I recommend you doing the same thing for your business. Even if you're the only employee, reading a book like Traction, The 4 Disciplines of Execution is another great book for how to drive performance in your organization. Highly recommend both of these books. If you're looking to scale, you're going to have an operating system. Your business is going to have to be more than just you and in your head. These books can help you document the things that you need to grow. So the second kind of bonus nugget that you could take away if you're looking to scale your business is you've got to improve your balance sheet and your balance sheet IQ. So we'll go to the next slide here. Here we go. Okay, so and just go ahead and go to the following slide after that. So when I talk about balance sheet IQ, as a new seller, you're not going to look at your balance sheet. You probably hate balance sheets. The fact that there even is such thing as a balance sheet is annoying to you, right? Most entrepreneurs don't like accounting to begin with. And by the way, if you're one of those people, if you hate numbers, glaze over here for 2 minutes. I promise the number whipping will end. But I want to show you a couple of really practical ratios that can help you understand your business. The first is called the quick ratio. This is basically a measurement of how liquid your business is. How do you have enough cash to meet your obligations, or are you feeling a cash crunch? And so just to show you the math here, this is kind of a subsection of a sample balance sheet here on the right-hand side. And as you can see, he has just about $221,000 in cash. That's that total bank accounts number at the top. And he has this Amazon receivable. They're going to pay him tomorrow. This is as good as cash coming out of Amazon. And so when you add that $39,000 to the 221, and then you divide that number, so this is kind of that little tiny math problem I have on the left-hand side here, and you divide that number, that 260 divided by 71, which is all of his current liabilities. This is all of his accounts payable, his payroll liabilities, his credit cards, everything that's currently going to be due in the next couple of months. You can see that he has a quick ratio of 3.66. That means that for every dollar he owes in short-term debt, he has $3 already in the bank. This is a great situation. This is a very well-capitalized business. Most of the sellers that we start working with don't have this healthy of a balance sheet. They start and they're in a position where it's less than one. They may only have 50 cents for every dollar they owe, and they're just hoping and praying that the next Amazon statement comes in, that they don't get shut off, that they don't have any supplier issues, that their terms continue to get more favorable. If this is you, by the way, this metric is meaningless taken in a vacuum. You really need to track it every month so that you can understand if it's improving or if it's not improving, if it's getting worse. The second little bullet point here is days of inventory. Because we work in an inventory-based business, understanding how much inventory we're carrying, because that's money we have tied up, is really important. Again, this doesn't matter. Frankly, you look at this guy, he has 122,000 in inventory. His average cost of goods sold is 22,000 per month. And so he has 5.5 months, or if you multiply it times days, he has 166 days worth of inventory sitting on his balance sheet. Just in case you're curious, I've seen that to be pretty average, maybe 100 to 180 days. As we're gearing up for the fourth quarter, you may get closer to 200, 250 days of inventory because you're buying up. But what's important about this is to really track this metric over time so that you can understand if you're carrying too much inventory, which, by the way, if you're having to have huge numbers because you can't see when things are moving or not moving, investing in some kind of a system that gives you greater visibility in your inventory so that you can wait a little bit longer before you purchase more is a good idea. So that's days of inventory. Obviously, if you're looking to improve it, you would try to decrease lead times by having a better inventory management system, or you would try to get better payment terms from your suppliers. And then I just want to say this, you've got to be proactive. I talked about this earlier, but you have to be proactive at managing your cash flow. Understand what kind of operating profit you expect to have, how many of your debt payments are going to be in the next few months, and then when you expect to actually have to make that 30% deposit on inventory plus the 70% on the back end, if that's how you work. Taxes, everything else. Think ahead on this stuff so that you understand how healthy your balance sheet is, and it's going to put you in a more powerful position to raise cash if you need to, or be okay if things don't go exactly as you plan for them to go. So that's the second tip, is really increase your understanding of your balance sheet and also make your balance sheet healthier. And so then the third one, the final kind of scalability nugget I'll give you is on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's not an accounting nugget. This last one, and we can go to the final couple of slides here, Sarah, but I don't know if any of you guys have ever joined a CEO roundtable group. Everyone in Amazon goes to these conferences and you'll join a mastermind. These are great. I love them. They're industry specific. They're kind of geared around what's the latest tip, the latest trick, the latest hack for Amazon sellers. I'm not saying don't go to those, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm currently a part of two groups of close friends they've become that are my board of directors, and they are the accountability that I need to grow. And so since I have a growth mindset, I want to surround myself with people who are going to help me get better. And I've been in a group for the last 7 years that we meet. Actually, we're going to meet tomorrow, but it's once a month for half a day. We process issues. We become better business owners. We implement tactics like the traction book I mentioned a few minutes ago. And as a result, all of us make more money. I started a group similar to this in Atlanta for 7- and 8-figure Amazon sellers because I didn't see something like this in the Amazon space. Again, we meet every single month, and we focus on how can we get more profitable. And we're on track, by the way. Our entire group is going to either double or triple the operating profit for the year, and we are way on track to do that. And so I just want to encourage you, if you've never considered joining, I'm not talking about just a hack mastermind, although those are cool. I'm talking about a recurring accountability group where you can get counsel every month, the kinds of things you can't talk to your employees about, and get that counsel. It was if you want to know what our secret weapon was, and at the healthcare company to get from 0 to 100 employees in 4 years, it was the counsel that I had from other CEOs. So I just want to, for what it's worth, I think that's a good tactic. And then kind of as I close here, so in closing my portion of the presentation, just remember that Amazon is going to continue to dominate the e-commerce space, at least for the next 5 years. The most profitable sellers are focusing on understanding where their money is. They don't get outside their niche. They know where they're strong, and they stay where they're strong, at least until they're big enough to invest in other channels. They know how to manage margins. They grade each SKU and kill the bad ones, and they proactively manage their cost of capital. And that's really what I have for my portion of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll be kicking it right over to Eric. But if you did want to know where to find Tyler, this is his email right here. And again, this webinar will be available on demand. It will be sent to you after the fact via email. So if you don't have a chance to write it down now, you will have another opportunity. And now I'm going to kick it over to Eric. Eric's going to talk about how WebGility can help you see your profits.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for Tyler for all the insights you just shared, and also thank you everyone for joining here today. So yeah, a lot of the things that Tyler talked about there are things that we're going to be able to help with using the WebGility software. So everything from being able to see high-level aggregate sales details to really being able to dig deep into the financials to get order level profitability and SKU level profitability within your accounting software. So what you're seeing here on the screen is our dashboard, where we're bringing in all your order information, orders, revenue, taxes, fees, shipping costs, all that into WebGility. And then this screen here is showing you kind of a high-level snapshot review of those sales numbers. So you'll be able to get that granular, or not granular level there, but very high-level details on this particular screen. So Sarah, if we can hop over to the next slide, this will show more of the granular details. So in addition to being able to see this stuff collectively, you'll also be able to dig down into each order as it's coming in to look at the actual order level profitability right on the same screen as the actual order details that we're pulling over. So it's very important to be able to increase your efficiencies and improve profitability by having the accurate insights, and that's what WebGility can help do, is by getting all the accurate financials posted into QuickBooks for you automatically, and speeding up that reconciliation process as well. On the next slide here, just to kind of touch, these are just some of the results from some of our testimonials and case studies. So some of these numbers are pretty daunting, but they're true stories. So one of the results of people working with WebGility is the ability to get rid of the manual work so they can focus on actually growing and scaling the business. So we do have one of our clients that was able to increase their order volume by 2,000% after signing on with WebGility. I mentioned, saving time and doing things faster earlier. Saving 50 hours a month from doing manual data entry is a great result. And then the next one here is the accuracy piece. So when dealing with manual data entry into your financial software, especially when your order volume is high, it's very easy to start having some human errors along the way. which is going to make reconciliation down the line very, very difficult. So a big thing for Webgility is making sure that we're pulling in every piece of financial information from those orders and getting it posted so you have 100% accurate financials within QuickBooks. And then, like Shen Lee said here, my favorite quote ever, it just works. So yeah, it's a great software, and we're able to help out and give you guys full insights to everything that's going on with the business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. So we're going to move right into our Q&A here, and that's going to include both Tyler and Eric. So if you guys have any questions, please submit them now. We'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to submit some questions if you haven't already. Okay, let's see. It looks like we have a question here for Tyler. How long does it take to get started with your business, Mr. Tyler?
So when you talk about getting started with your business, if I don't hit this question correctly, ask it again. But I think what you're asking is, if I'm a startup, how long does it take to get an Amazon business off the ground? And it really depends. I've seen sellers come in, have a good set of products, and within a year be at $500,000. I think I had a seller last year that did $500,000 in revenue their first year in sales. I've seen some do even better than that. A lot of it is going to depend on how you fund your business growth. So if you're in a position where you can bring a lot of capital to the table, and as soon as you find a product that's a winner, you can immediately invest heavily in that product, then you're going to be able to grow a lot more quickly. If you're looking to bootstrap it, if you're really trying to stay lean, then there's a good chance that you're going to have to kind of grow at the pace that you can bring on new products. And so maybe one more thing I would add to that is, we recommend testing a handful of SKUs or a handful of ASINs at a time. So maybe you'll test 5, and you don't expect all 5 of them to be winners, especially if you're one of the private label sellers that we're talking to on the call here. You're going to get traction on maybe 2 or 3 of those 5. You're going to have 2 or 3 of them lose. You kill the bad guys, you reorder the good guys, and now you've got a little bit of money to test 5 more products, and then 5 more products, and 5 more products. And the more profitable you are, the more cash you can generate, the more power you have to advertise aggressively and try to beat your competitors, and the more purchasing power you have to buy more product, which allows you to grow more quickly.
Perfect. Yeah, and it looks like I had a question here as well about the screens that I was showing. So the screens that I went over real quick there were Webgility screens. So that's exactly what it would look like within the Webgility platform. So I do also have some slides that I could go over with you on an individual basis if you guys want to reach out on what that information would look like in QuickBooks, so you can kind of see it from both sides.
Okay, Tyler, I'm going to think this one's for you. So this question is from Chelsea. As an owner of a brand, we have the margins needed. How much should we be spending on advertising?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think you said Chelsea. Yeah, great question, Chelsea. This is the key question. So philosophically, the answer is as much as you possibly can. What I mean by that is, the name of the game with Amazon is to have a good enough product that solves enough of a problem, and to have enough profit margin, like you kind of alluded to in your question, built into that product, that you can afford to be really aggressive. One of the thought leaders in the ClickFunnels world is a guy named Russell Brunson. He always says, whoever can spend the most to acquire a new customer is going to win. My caveat to that would be, you just have to be profitable enough. And so, and the target, Chelsea, if you're looking for something practical for our clients, especially in the private label space, is about 10%. But it just depends. If you have better margins, for instance, I have one seller who, basically has 20% cost of goods sold, meaning he has really, really cheap products, he can make a bunch of margin, he can afford to pay a lot more to acquire his customers, and he has to because it's a very competitive space where his competitors are hyper aggressive. The opposite again is true if you have pretty slim margins, or maybe you're more moderate. You can't afford to screw it up advertising too much if your margins are slim, because you'll lose money really quickly.
All right, thank you. We have another question. When you talk about the bad guy SKUs, how do you determine when it's time to kill him, even if he's not losing money, just bringing in profits slower than your fastest good guy? Tyler, I think that one was for you. Oh, Tyler, did we lose you?
I might have lost my my headset there. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Did you
Sorry
hear
about
the
that.
question? Do you need me to repeat it?
I did, and I realized I was having a monologue here. Forgive me. Yeah, so great question. You're talking about bad guys, good guys. So if you had a spreadsheet with each of your SKUs, and you could kind of calculate on average what your profitability would be per sale, and so you determine, here's my favorite SKUs, here's the ones that I kind of hate, if I could be honest. You will continue to tolerate underperformers as long as there's not a better way you could invest your money, right? Because you have limited capital at your disposal. You have a certain amount of money that you can afford to invest in purchasing new products. And at some point, you're going to be able to spend that precious capital on a new SKU that's going to perform better than the one that you kind of, he's a bad guy, but I keep him around, right? And so that's the moment when it's absolutely critical that you go ahead and kill him. What I say though is because you're kind of describing like a neutral guy. He's not good or bad. I mean, if he was negative, if he was costing me money, I would kill him. But he's kind of just neutral. Well, what I would say here is as your business continues to grow, your threshold for what is acceptable has to continue to go up. Meaning, if a discretionary cash flow of 10% is your current threshold, maybe next year your goal is to make that be 15%. Let's get everybody above 15%. But I don't think you have to necessarily be knee-jerk about this. It's all about where could I potentially take this precious cost of goods sold money, this advertising money, and make more of an ROI on that investment.
All right, great. It looks like Jean says, thank you so much, Tyler. And it looks like those are the rest of our questions. But of course, if you have any other further questions, feel free to reach out to us or to Tyler. Tyler, do you want to tell them again where they can reach you?
Sure, absolutely. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I've built kind of a template for cash flow forecasting. It's just a spreadsheet, nothing fancy. But if you would like my template, just shoot me an email, tyler@selleraccountant.com. I'm glad to share it with you. And then the website, selleraccountant.com, you can learn more about our company. And then just Sarah and Eric, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you guys all for joining the webinar.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right. Well, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. This is where to find Webgility if you are interested in seeing that order level profitability. You can give us an email at hello@webgility.com. And again, this will be sent to you via email. It will live in our library. You will be able to access it after the fact. So thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.